Hello there, welcome back. And if you're new, welcome in the first place. We're going to be talking today about the debut album by Big Country, seminal masterpiece from 1983. So it's a happy 40th anniversary to The Crossing by Big Country. Calling it a seminal masterpiece probably tells you where I'm going to land on this. In fact, I could pretty much end it there. But I won't. So a little bit of background. About a year ago, I was on a show on Grant's Rock Warehouse talking about this record. And it was kind of funny being on with Americans, who, for them, it was this album, more casual fans, none of them apart from me were diehard Big Country fans. And for them, it was this band who had something 40 odd years ago and maybe a couple of minor things since then, and that was it. Whereas to me, it's the debut of this iconic, seminal band, with the flourishing of one of the great artists in Stuart Adamson. So I guess that's geography at play for you. Being Scottish, I'm probably more inclined to think that way. So, to go even further back than that, when I first got into Big Country, late 90s, went to see a re-release of Restless Natives, the rather wonderful Scottish film, and the soundtrack for that was done by Big Country. Wonderful stuff, and that got me into them. It had a few songs, but it was also heavily instrumental score as well. Wonderful in that kind of local hero kind of way. And I got the record at the time, so it's the same one I've still got. I think it was £1 back when, before records came back in vogue and everything just jumped up in price. So gradually picked them up one by one. You can see a couple more behind me, which we'll get around to talking about if people enjoy this. If you don't, I might just do it anyway. And yeah, so went way down the rabbit holes with all sorts of releases. The fan clubby things like the rarities releases and Stuart's side project, his last thing they ever did, the Raphaels, all sorts. Been picking up all the box sets that have been released in recent years, from Cherry Red, right up to this year with Damascus. Stunning stuff. We're absolutely spoiled. But we'll go back, but not all the way back to the beginning with this kind of, I don't know, is it a Stuart Adamson retrospective almost, I suppose? But we won't go back as far as the Skids just yet. I'll probably jump back round to them, because that's more of a collaboration with Jobson. Richard Jobson, not Eddie Jobson. So, 1983, we get this, July 15th, I think, 1983. Not that that matters, but which had already been preceded by a single the previous year, which hadn't done well, which is bizarre because it's such a great single, but we'll get into it. 10 tracks, produced by Steve Lillywhite, who obviously would have so much fame with U2 and The La's and all sorts. He's probably the prototype of a post-punk producer, and that's kind of interesting. Is this post-punk? If you look up the descriptions of Big Country, you will see everything. You will see Celtic rock, you will see classic rock, you will see indie, you will see post-punk, you will just see pop, you will just see rock. To me, it's the sound of Stuart Adamson. Genre is just a rather tedious way to separate music so it's easier to find in record stores. Don't get too hung up on labels. So, let's go into the music itself then. So, the band started obviously with Stuart leaving the Skids, and wanted to put together this more Scottish project, if you will. And he had ideas on how to do that, but still maintain, I guess, an identity or establish his own identity in terms of what would I be solo, ditching the kind of punky, well, a lot of the punkiness, but still keeping a little bit of the attitude. So Stuart and Bruce Watson on co-lead guitar and Ebo and whatnot, were joined by the addition quite a few, but they were joined by the rhythm section of Tony Butler and Mark Brzezowski, who had already been working together. Tony and Mark, they had been on some of Pete Townshend's early albums and quite a few more things. So already very established session guys, but this was their first time in a real ongoing concern major band. And Big Country were indeed quite successful pretty fast. Although the first single didn't do well, this album went straight up to number 3 in the charts. And it did have the massive hit that was not quite a title track for the band, but In a Big Country. So I'd imagine a few people have thought that was the name of the album over the years, but no, it is indeed The Crossing. And it almost is The Crossing. It's the crossing from Stuart's career from the Skids into this big country sound, which is totally different entirely. Wonderful though. So we'll just go into the tracks. In a Big Country is just anthemic. It's a word you can throw around quite easily on this record. There's so many anthems on it. There's a very Scottish thing on it, where, and Stuart does it a lot, where he just explodes with almost an impulse yell. Sha! Sha! And Fish does that in Marillion, or when he was in Marillion. Ricky Ross does it in Deacon Blue. So I'm wondering if it's a Scottish thing. Where can't think of a lyric here. What should we do? Sha! What is that? I don't know, but it sounds great. It sounds great. What a way to kick off your actual career. Here's your back, by the way, should you be. And then the vinyl had the wonderful insert with illustrations of each track, which was rather nice. So In a Big Country itself establishes what people think of as the big country sound pretty fast. Are those bagpipes? No, they're not. They're a guitar with an effects pedal on it, but wow, you could be mistaken. But then it's got that kind of uncanny valley thing where it doesn't sound quite like a bagpipe either, so it just sounds again like big country, being distinctive. You add on the EBow to a lot of these tracks and you have perfection. In a Big Country, it's an anthem for Dunfermline Football Club, Stuart's local team. It's an anthem in Scotland. It's just a great rock anthem. If more people, if that was used on Stranger Things next season, I guarantee that would have a massive renaissance like Kate Bush. Maybe not quite as big, but you know what I mean. Who, funnily enough, is on that album this year. That in a big country, dreams stay with you like a lover's voice flies the mountainside, stay alive. But again, with this wonderful staccato guitar playing from Stuart, he's such a great guitar player, and that goes straight into Inwards, track 2, which is much more of what you'd think of as a post-punk single. Very chicken scratch sounds, but wonderfully esoteric. Wonderfully noodly and vibrant, but it's got a real paranoia. It's got a real bleakness to it, even though it's constantly moving. It's a wonderful dichotomy, with the everything them was and everything's loose, and Stuart just singing in this. It's an indomitable style where he has a defiance in the face of defeat. Which just sums up Stuart perfectly. It's a great song. I'm going to stick some below for people that maybe don't know. Chance, much more of a melancholy, downbeat track. So this is almost where there's a bit more defeat coming into it with oh Lord, where did the feeling go? Oh Lord, I never felt so low. Dun, 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 dun. So again, with wonderful guitar stings, and then this we've got more interesting drumming coming through as well, with an almost xylophone-like feel coming into it. It's really oddball, but it works perfectly and gives it an interesting and strange, eerie feel, which adds to this downbeat feeling that goes throughout it. And this album's very dark and light in terms of its it's upbeat and it's lows, but it never goes too far in any one direction where the other side jars. It never feels like, oh, you've depressed me. It's not like Leonard Cohen suddenly putting a rave track on the end of a record. I love that. Bit late now. 1,000 Stars. Again, that's an anthem musically, but then lyrically, it's taking you into the luck of 1,000 stars can't get me out of this. So it brings you right back down lyrically into this darkness, but it's still with a really upbeat feel to it. It's defiance in the face of really right through this record. And I love this because it starts almost as if you're in the middle of a track. Now we play a final hand. Oh, brilliant stuff. Yeah, I absolutely love 1,000 Stars. The Storm rounds off side one, and that's inspired by the Jacobean Rebellion, Bonnie Prince Charlie and whatnot. The Young Pretender. Oh yes, I'm the young pretender. That was his first hit. But The Storm is another one that people will think of as quintessential big country. Because you do have that must be bagpipes. And no, it's not. It's the effects pedal and the e-bow being brought in. But with this wonderful cacophonous sound, the just breathtaking stuff really sets the scene to know it's about the Jacobite Rebellion and then hear what the music is doing around you is really establishing. It really puts you in the music itself. It really puts you in the place and time, with the real downbeat feel, with the "Oh my James, you didn't have to do this." But again, the musical parts are also still modern. They aren't doing the Coddies or some folk bands singing songs of Culloden and whatnot. They found a way to revitalise old ideas. Everything inwards and everything's new, I suppose. Brilliant stuff. The Storm is. There's probably a more famous version of The Storm on side 2 at the end, but we'll come to that. Harvest Home. I should have a. Yeah, we'll come to that in a minute, actually. Harvest Home's another real upbeat one to kick off side 2, with a really great bass, like boom, 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 just propels everything along. You want your rhythm section to move when it comes to an upbeat song, to really give rhythm, to move the song along, and that's the way it feels. It feels like the song is just rolling along on top of the bass in particular on this track, with the "Who saw the fences falling? Who broke the ploughman's bread?" It's brilliant stuff. It's absolutely sincere. There's not a bad track on this record. Lost Patrol has much more of an old school folky vibe. But it's probably as close as the album comes to for a track that I'm not 100% sold on. I like it, it's just something has to be your least favourite. But I still love it, But it's certainly more on the folky side with the "There is no beauty here, just a stench of beer." It's a little bit more on that side, which I like to. But it's probably because it's the song before my absolute favourite, Close Action, which, total lighters in the air stuff for me. Real anthem. I don't think I can do this justice. I'd need to just put the link below. But when Stuart's doing the chorus, when it really hits in for the ascension of the chorus with the "I will carry you home," it just breaks me. "With the gods in my eyes, I will carry you home on the westerly side." It's just gorgeous. Again, songs of defiance, songs of isolation, songs of desolation, decimation. Sounds like I'm doing that Stevie Wonder song, doesn't it? Past tense. Isolation, desperation, mutation, corporation, master. Never mind. Close Action is just, for me, is Big Country at their best. Doing this wonderfully modern stuff, but the sensibilities that have come from all over the place, from punk, from folk, from ancient Celtic melodies. Yeah, stunning stuff, with great backing vocals on that as well. Fields of Fire should have been a massive hit, I think. It's got a wonderfully catchy, upbeat sing along, as we're going to refrain, between the father and the son, between the city and the one, and then when it kicks into the chorus with the 400 miles without a word until you smile, 400 miles on fields of fire. Yes, that is. I would say that must have been a great thing to hear at a gig, but we can go into that in a second, because that leads us into Portman, which comes from the H.G. Wells short story, which I read in school. So Portman, you might be, given the band themselves, might be forgiven in thinking that maybe that's some Scottish legend. Or no, it's by H.G. Wells. It's just a short story, kind of slightly horror story, slightly fantastical story set in Africa. But it takes the name, it takes some of the themes of it, and really it's one of the best instrumentals that Big Country ever had, even though there's singing in it, which is a bit of a dichotomy. But to be honest, it's the one track on this album I could actually lose the vocals and I'd still love it just as much. It's got this wonderful, twangy, distinctive Stuart Adamson guitar right throughout it, which is, again, it pulls in all the tricks, all the E-bow and the effects pedals, but it just sounds like Stuart Adamson playing. There's no other way to describe it. It's just haunting, ethereal, bleak, but beautiful at the same time. It's got a melancholy beauty to it, which just, I don't know, to me Stuart could do that so well, just so well. I just think, there's 10 tracks on this album, and my least favourite track, Lost Patrol, is still a really great song. So it really is just a perfect record, pretty much. There's just nothing to change about it, absolutely nothing. I think it's just essential stuff. Here's a couple of singles. So here's the 12-inch of In a Big Country Dream Stay With You. Rather nice stuff. And here's my all-time favourite, is the picture disc. The picture disc of Fields of Fire, which is, are you ready? In the Shape of Scotland. Scottish shaped picture disc. You get to watch Scotland go around your record player. Great stuff. The deluxe edition CD of this, 2 CD, is brilliant too. It's got some great live stuff on it, like Stuart's version of Tracks of My Tears. It's got all sorts of demos. It's got the Wonderland EP on it. Yeah, it does. It's got the early stuff like Angle Park and All of Us, Heart and Soul, The Crossing itself, which isn't on the actual album, but it was a song. This is, I don't think these are easy to get now, the deluxe editions, but it's essential stuff should you find it. But talking about essential, Live at the Barrowlands, 1983. This was recorded at the end of the tour for The Crossing. So the end of their first tour, and it's the Barrowlands is legendary, iconic venue in Glasgow, and it's very much their homecoming. So it was New Year's Eve 1983 going into 1984, and the audience are acting like this is a band that they've loved for decades, even though it's a new band. So they can only have known them for just over a year at most, even if they were into them when the first single landed, but they know every word of every song. So essentially on this you get the whole album pretty much. 1,000 Stars, Angle Park, Close Action, Lost Patrol, Wonderland, The Storm, pipe band sequence, because it's New Year's Eve, they bring in a full pipe band. Porriman, Chance, Inwards, Fields of Fire, Harvest Home, Tracks of My Tears, In a Big Country, and then Old Lang Syne. You get some bonus stuff on that. You get Live at the Peppermint Lounge 1982, photo gallery and whatnot. This gig is also where producer Steve Lillywhite proposed to also legendary, also tragically died young Kirsty MacColl backstage. This is the same gig. He proposed to her New Year's Eve going into 84. This show is essential stuff because it takes all the stuff from the album and then translates it to a live setting where the punkiness is still available, still present, still obvious. So you get pogoing, you get people going mental. Stuff that's a bit slower on the record picks up steam. Stuart and Bruce are just, they must have been shattered by the end of the gig. They are just non-stop. They're like a couple of popinjays. They're just jumping all round the place. Stuart's banter in between a couple of the songs because he's back home is impossibly Scottish. I struggle to understand what he says at some points. But it's really heartwarming. He's got a great rapport with the audience. The whole band do. The audience are just in sync perfectly with the band. Great to see the audience knowing every word of every song, singing. The second the song hits in, they cheer because they know exactly what it is. There's wonderful playing throughout. It's wonderful to see them doing stuff on stage with the E-bow and whatnot, and going, wow, this is amazing how they can replicate so much of this on stage. Stuart does not get the credit he deserves as a guitar player. He was a monster guitar player, an absolute monster guitar player. Just for whatever reason, never gets recognised. He never gets put into that category of, like, from that period, who would be Johnny Marr, probably would be one of the most famous, but he never gets the recognition. And I don't think Big Country do either, really. In terms of their popularity now, I mean, I don't see, I see a lot of young people posting vinyl on Facebook and talking about records on YouTube. I don't see them talking about Big Country ever. And they should, because I guarantee they bloody love this stuff. Bloody love it, because some of the stuff they listen to is so close to it, but this is better. So yeah, couple of tracks below, if you're not familiar, and yeah, just absolutely, if you don't own this record, then beg, steal, borrow. If you don't own this, same, get yourself a copy. It's CD DVD, so you can listen to it and watch it. Live at the Barrowlands, is that what it's just called? Yeah, Live at Barrowland 1983, the Homecoming. And yeah, if you ever see the picture disc, pick that up too. Right, we'll call it quits there. Well, I think it went okay. So if you want to come back in a wee while, then we'll do follow-ups and whatnot. Yeah, that'd be cool. Should we do the weird covers records that they did in the 90s and stuff? It's really weird, wasn't it? We'll get into that. Anyways, thank you very much, ladies and germs. Tip your waitress. Arrivederci, Roma. Anything else I forgot to say? Just stick a comment below. Like, subscribe. I don't do any of that. Nah, I'll just see you next time.